Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome back. Another episode of Move the Sticks right here. Rhett Lewis, Bucky Brooks in for DJ today, but we get to welcome our good pal, Bruce Feldman, here with us. Bruce, of course, does great work for Fox throughout the college football season. You see him on the desk throughout college football Saturdays, and of course, bringing great info and analysis throughout. Bruce, welcome, man. No shortage of storylines through college football over the last couple of weeks since we last spoke. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. You're right. It's, we got the playoff about to start, but Michigan has taken over the stage with a lot of dysfunction and craziness.
Well, let's start right there. Let's get that thing out of the way here. Where do we stand right now? I know there's been multiple coaches, big name coaches that have reportedly been taking swings at with Kenny Dillingham and Kalen DeBoer. And as of now, those coaches remain at their schools. So where is Michigan going at this point?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are going on right now. You have an investigation into what happened, not just who knew what when, but I also think there's part of the question is how come people higher up didn't know what was going on, or to that point until it really exploded into a really ugly story. So there's that. I don't know if that means the AD, Ward Manuel, is going to be the AD that much longer. From what I've heard, his situation is very tenuous, to be honest. So we'll see where that goes. There is a search that's already started. The timing's never good, right? But like you mentioned, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer's team is playing in the playoff in less than 36 hours from when we're taping or so, if I do my math right. He's not leaving right now. Right. I think the question's going to be if they make an early exit, would it make some sense for him to go, you know what, maybe this isn't the right spot for me. Maybe I want a different start, and maybe I go back to the Midwest. He's a South Dakota guy. He coached in the Big Ten at your alma mater. He was off the corner, right, at Indiana. So really good coach. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. From talking to people close to him, they've said that, his family likes it there. He knew what that job was going to be like. He knew he was replacing Nick Saban. It wasn't like he didn't think there was going to be massive amounts of pressure. So we'll see on that. Dillingham situation, I feel like, is this. I think from what I understand, there's some interest on both sides. I don't know how much interest on the Michigan piece of it. But, if you're Kenny Dillingham, you're looking at it going, okay, you have a good job at your alma mater. You've done really well in a short amount of time, but also the resources are way different. Look, his quarterback, who was impressive last year, Sam Levitt, in helping lead them to the playoff with Scadaboo, and they did well in the playoff. They almost knocked Texas out, but he's in the portal. He didn't go to like their captain's banquet or whatever a couple of weeks ago, and I think that's kind of significant. It tells you maybe where the state of college football is to some degree, and also probably where the state of what Arizona State football is too. And I think that if you're Kenny Dillingham, you probably got to listen if Michigan is interested. There's also the interim there, Biff Poggi, who has a lot of respect from the current Michigan players as well as really key people involved in Michigan football. They know how integral he was, how Jim Harbaugh leaned on him more than anybody else to get that program turned around. So, if they're looking at it saying, hey, after what we just had, we need an adult in the room. Yeah. I think Biff Poggi might be a sensible, shorter term option for them, depending on where it goes.
Bruce, what happened to the players that just signed? Like the guys that just signed on signing day, they just committed to Michigan. Now this blows up. What happens to this class that was regarded as a highly touted class coming in?
Yeah, you're talking about arguably the best running back recruit in the country, signed into that group. I'm interested to see how it plays out because I think, we're in this stage right now. I did this story for The Athletic earlier this week on talking to a lot of coaches for a college football confidential piece. And one of the things that came up was a lot of these guys who are not in the playoff, they were pretty free. I was like, what are you doing right now? And they're like, it's basically the portal has opened up, but it's not officially opened up. I'm watching a ton of film on guys that we hear are going in. And I think that's the part that, right now they're scrambling to keep whoever they can keep. But I don't know how you tell players. Now it's Michigan. It's a blue blood school that won a national title a few years ago and obviously a great education. But you do not know who the coaches are going to be. So how do you feel about committing to that? Right.
Yeah.
So, I think if you're, especially certain positions, maybe if you're a lineman, you're like, okay, I know Michigan, like whoever's been there, even when they've been bad, they've had really good offensive lines. They're going to be physical. It's kind of in the DNA, I think, defensively. But if you're a skill guy, if you're a receiver, if you're a running back, or definitely if you're a quarterback, and they got Bryce Underwood, a former 5-star who had a up and down freshman year.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Because they were terrible on offense last year, and they were not that good on offense this year.
Okay, so one more here, and then I want to get into some college football playoff stuff here with you. But are we really at a point where Kalen DeBoer in year 2, we're talking about a win or a loss away from maybe deciding to up and leave arguably the best job in college football? That's like part one of the question, and then part two is like, is Michigan is it more of he could view Michigan as a better fit, or like Michigan truly presents a better opportunity than sitting here at Alabama, considering, I guess, the shadow of Nick Saban?
I think it would be more of, is Michigan a better fit than Alabama is? Kalen DeBoer is a smart guy. He's obviously a phenomenal coach, but I think you can go in thinking, okay, I get it. I'm replacing the greatest coach in the history of the sport. I'm in the SEC. There's this hotbed of passion and energy and maybe paranoia. But until you're in it, I don't know if you can really grasp what that feels like, right?
That's fair.
Again, 2 years of it, I think he would have gotten a pretty good dose of it. And, struggles bring out the worst in people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if they didn't lose to Oklahoma 24-3 last year, they're a playoff team. And I don't know if the heat is as high when they lose to what turned out to be a pretty, average at best, mediocre Florida State team. They kind of lost to him handily in the opener. And then he has some good wins. He won in Athens earlier this year. He beat Georgia last year. It's not like he hasn't done anything. I mean, they are in the playoff, but I think the way they sputtered down the stretch, barely beat Auburn. You talk to some people around there, and I'm not talking about the AD or anybody who really, really matters, but they're like, man, if he lost to Auburn, it would have been really bad because then he doesn't make the playoff, right? So to answer your question on the first part, Rhett, we'll see. We will see. I mean, I hope
it seems crazy to me. That's why I ask it, Bruce.
Yeah, it is crazy, but it's college football.
Yeah, but and that is crazy, right, Buck? So let's get into the playoff.
Such a nutty time.
Yeah. So looking at these matchups, A&M Miami, obviously it starts with Oklahoma and Alabama for the right to play Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And then we go into Saturday with the triple header, A&M and Miami. Before we get into the Saturday stuff, I know Bucky's got some gas there. On Friday, since we're talking about DeBoer, Alabama and Oklahoma, again, how do we see this matchup? What intrigues you most about the way that these two teams will go at it in this one?
For me, it's really, can Alabama establish some semblance of a run game to take some heat off Ty Simpson? I think Ty Simpson's been terrific this year. Yeah. He's been a little streaky, but it's been a long season. And they lose Jam Miller early in the season and then again late in the season. I think the optimism is that he's back. And he's their best running back, right? And I think what we know is Ryan Grubb, who had been the Seahawks offensive coordinator last year, and before that, he was the guy who ran the show for DeBoer when Washington and Penix were playing for the national title. He's a really good offensive coach, but he's not all in on the run game. He loves to throw it. And I think they have some really good concepts. And the question to me is going to be, can they get some semblance of a run game, and can they protect Ty Simpson? Because Oklahoma has, excellent defense. And that's the thing to me, because if this game is under 20, is played under 21, meaning like the winner has 21, I think that's a bad sign for Alabama. They have to find a way they can't afford mistakes. They had a bunch of turnovers and allowed him to get pressure a lot. And I think they got to take advantage of the big plays when they're there. If it's a higher scoring game, I don't think Oklahoma can keep up.
Yeah.
Bruce, tell me really quick, what do you think about Brent Venables and the turnaround job that he has done? What has been the biggest difference in Oklahoma this year compared to the previous years where they struggled to kind of make their mark as a blue blood?
Yeah, I think, Bucky, I think it's a couple of things. One, he is a really good play caller on the defensive side of the ball. I think he has a good feel for it. He has a really good defensive line. He has a lot of, playmakers in the front seven. I think that's a big thing. It's one of the best college defenses out there. The other thing, I think, when John Mateer was healthy in the early part of the year, he gave them something they didn't have, which was a real run game because he was such a threat. I don't want to say he's Baker Mayfield. That's unfair. I feel like he's probably closer to Riley Leonard, in terms of he's probably more of a threat consistently with his legs than he is with his arm. They have one playmaker outside, Isaiah Satania, who's a former track guy who will bust some big plays, and he did that a couple of times when they desperately needed it. But Mateer got hurt right before, like a week or two before the Red River game, or I guess it was a couple of weeks before. He came back and played in that game. He really didn't have many practice reps before that. He was really rusty. I think he got picked off 3 times. They looked bad. And it felt like he never got back, got his kind of rhythm back. We'll see if he has that now that he's had a couple of weeks off, because if he's not a true dual threat, I think they're going to struggle to score more than 14 points unless the defense gets them points.
That's an interesting point to consider here. When we get into Saturday, obviously we'll see 2 group of 5 team, or whatever we want to call them now. Tulane and James Madison going on the road. Tulane to Ole Miss, to Oxford, and then James Madison up to Autzen Stadium to battle Oregon. Also have the Texas A&M Miami game. We're going to be a great one there. Do you have any sense of a potential upset on Saturday, Bruce?
I think the better chance for the upset is the game that's already happened, which was Tulane got smashed in Oxford like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I think Tulane, and it's not just because Lane's not there and there's been a lot of distraction. I think Tulane will give them a much better game. They have some good players. They don't have the depth Ole Miss has.
Right.
I think what hurt them in that first time is Jake Retzloff is a pretty good dual threat quarterback. He's got good speed, good wheels. They couldn't get anything in the run game, and he's streaky. And then because of that, I think they were just kind of stuck. They couldn't get anything going at all. If he gets off to a fast start and can make some plays with his legs, I think he will present some problems. Like I said, he's really streaky, but there are times when you watch him, you're like, okay, he's not going to be scared. He's going to give you everything he's got. And I'm curious how Ole Miss reacts if this game is tight in the second half. If it gets into the second half and it's not a blowout, because again, this is the same Ole Miss team that barely survived against Washington State, and Tulane's better than Washington State. I get it. Maybe they were looking ahead. It was Washington State, but there wasn't like a lot of fluky stuff about that. Washington State, I think, had a really good plan for them. I feel like their quarterback's a lesser version of a dual threat guy, but he can run, and I think that gave Pete Golding and that Ole Miss defense some problems. And again, now Pete Golding's the full-time head coach. I just think it's going to be interesting to see how Ole Miss handles it. I know the place is going to be wild because they're going to show Lane Kiffin, or want to show Lane Kiffin, we're much better off without you, and this place isn't going anywhere. And it's going to be interesting if Tulane can keep it a game into the second half when that energy might kind of start to go in the other direction.
Hey, you brought it up, Pete Golding. A lot of people don't know who he is because he's been on the sideline. He's bounced around. He's a really good defensive coordinator. What do you know? Because I know you've had interactions with him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember doing a story on him a long time ago when Saban had hired him in Tuscaloosa. And it's ironic because Frank Wilson, longtime New Orleans high school coach who's bounced around the SEC, he's the interim head coach, now at LSU, but he's going to go back to Ole Miss to go work for Pete Golding. And Frank Wilson just raved about Pete Golding to me about like, if Saban interviews him, he's going to hire him. He's as savvy as there comes when it comes to getting on the board, and players want to play for him. He's an old Ron Roberts. Ron Roberts has this. He's this I think he's originally from California, but spent a lot of time in the Deep South and worked his way up, was Florida's defensive coordinators, bounced around. But he has a pretty good coaching tree of guys, including Dave Aranda, Pete Golding, B. Brown, who's probably going to be the defensive coordinator now with Golding moving up. There's a bunch of guys who fit in that tree who started out at like Delta State and these really small schools. And, I think there's a lot of people who feel really good for Pete Golding that he got this job. But it's big shoes to fill right now without Lane Kiffin there. And I know the players are going to want to kind of stick it back in Kiffin's face, because we heard from some of them about, what they thought about Lane saying some stuff that apparently wasn't true about how they felt. And it's going to be really interesting, especially if that game gets close, how it stays close, how it starts to feel.
Interesting. Okay, so we talked about awaiting the winner of Oklahoma and Alabama is number 1 Indiana. And speaking of number 1, that certainly feels like where Fernando Mendoza is positioned when we get to the draft in terms of QB1. Is that consensus from what you've heard as well? And then how do you see the quarterback class outside of Mendoza following that, Bruce?
Yeah, that's for the early returns that's what I've heard too. Yeah. And I think there's a couple things Mendoza has going for him. He's really, really smart. Coaches I've talked to think he makes, great post-snap decisions. He's got good size. He's not a plus athlete, but we've seen him, run around and make some plays to extend plays and get first downs. I mean, I don't think he's the athlete like Joe Burrow is, much less, guys who are, or Josh Allen or, never going to bring, Lamar's name in this, but like, he's a decent athlete. I think the things that I like most about him are he threw a pick 6 at Oregon in the second half. And I'm like, oh, this is it. And he responded to lead them to a win. That was big. The last drive against Penn State. Penn State has some NFL dudes, by the way, on that defense.
A bunch.
And and it's not an easy place to play, no matter how bad. They got in his face. I mean, credit to Omar Cooper Jr. He looked like what he was, a former high school basketball star on the game-winning touchdown catch. But I thought that was another time where like, okay, we got, you got some in him. And then I thought, a couple of weeks ago, they play in the Big Ten title game. There's a ton of NFL talent on that defense. Like I think the best defensive players in the back in the secondary are at Ohio State. I think there's 3 there there's no team that has even one as good as those 3. I'm talking about Reese Downs and Sonny Styles. I mean, those guys are elite athletes, elite players. And he didn't buckle. I thought he's impressive. After him, I could talk myself into Ty Simpson. The part that would scare me is Ty Simpson, even though he's like 23 years old or about to be, I forget what, where his birthday's coming up. He hadn't played that much, right? But the arm is good. I think he's a much better runner, certainly than Mendoza. He's streaky, but they've had a bunch of drops. I mean, Ryan Williams does not look like the Ryan Williams we saw last year. I think that's been a little bit of an issue. They don't have a running game or a consistent running game. He's playing against SEC defenses a lot. I would put Ty Simpson in there. And then after that, I don't know where, Dante Moore, the feeling I got earlier in the year was there were no rush to go. When I say they, I mean like him and his family were in no rush to jump into the end because he hadn't played very much at all either. And I think they know more reps is probably better. I think even if somebody told him, hey, you're going to be a top 5 pick, Oregon can pay him a lot of money. I'm not saying they can pay him NFL money, but if it's the long-term play to stay and get more seasoning, assuming he, buys into, Will Stein, the offense coordinator, is going to move on to be the head coach of Kentucky. Drew Maringer is a tight ends coach. Now he's taken over. Assuming they feel good about that, then I would think he would lean to staying. But obviously there's a lot of football left to be played over the next month. And who knows, maybe somebody else will emerge. But like when you look at the beginning of this, I feel like we probably talked about this over the summer. The guys who a lot of people were rejecting, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, not there anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Bruce, I got a wildcard name for you. How about Darren Mensah from Duke, Tulane transfer? There's some conversation about him kind of being a guy that is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see him being interesting. I would be surprised if he was in the first round discussion. To me, the biggest issues with him is the ball security. He had a lot of fumbles in big games. He throws it well. He's accurate. I don't know if there's anything elite about him. He's a decent athlete. He's not a great runner. I don't know, from what I had heard, I don't think he was exactly a willing, runner, which, look, he's smart. So maybe that's part of it. I'd be surprised if he was in the first round discussion, no matter how weak this quarterback class turns out to be beyond Mensa. I would be surprised if people evaluate him and say, oh, he's going to be a first round guy. Now, Kenny Pickett was a first round guy, because it depends on need. Yeah. But I don't know.
Inventory, right? Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's like you just look at, to me, Jackson Dart, there was a lot to like and a little bit to be like, on. But, he was a higher level athlete than these guys. I feel like he had more juice in his arm. Yeah. The thing I worry about Jackson Dart, if I was a Giants fan, I'd really worry about it is it's not just like a hit count. It's literally like, don't play like this because you're not in college football anymore.
Right.
These guys are going to knock your head off.
Right.
And, but he physically had tools that were like, oh, you could see him as a first round pick. Yeah. I don't know about some of these other guys at this point. And you start to say, okay, maybe next year's draft will be better. But I just don't, for quarterbacks, I just don't see it as being that deep of a group. If you're looking at like, oh, is this guy going to be a first round quarterback? There might be third round guys, but
right. Yeah. Yeah. Look, we've seen Tyler Shuck as a second rounder, from this year's class start to really kind of show up here late season for the New Orleans Saints. Actually has the most wins out of any rookie quarterback starter right now as we go into the final 3 weeks of the season. But one of the other things to think about, and we'll address this in another episode, Bruce, but guys like Dante Moore, the class is going to be more crowded next year. And so, you wonder how that kind of factors into the decision-making process too. So we'll see how it all plays out. Yeah.
The only thing with that, Red, I think we thought this class was going to be crowded. And
I know.
Then all of a sudden it was like, look at Penn State, look at Nuss. Yeah, Klubnik. Like I don't know what the second act for, especially Klubnik and Nussmeier. I know they played each other in the first game. Like I really like both guys from a makeup standpoint. But when you watch Klubnik early on, he had a pretty experienced offensive line. I know they were missing probably their best receiver for a bunch of the year, but he didn't look like he was a 3-year starter, right? And with Garrett, obviously son of an NFL coach and former NFL quarterback, and everybody loves him. And there's still some gunslinger. And I just felt like the whole year started out bad for it, beyond winning at Clemson, and it turned out it was a Clemson thing. Like it just felt like something's off. It doesn't mean that if somebody takes him in the third round, people might say, oh, if you bring him along, he may have starter ability in there, but just it was a bad combination of things in Baton Rouge this year.
Yeah, I think the coaches are going to love Garrett Nussmeier. He's such a technician, and we'll see how that ends up factoring into the entire decision. But Bruce, always a pleasure, man. Appreciate all your great work on Fox, and obviously the work you do writing for The Athletic as well. We always appreciate you here on Move the Sticks.
Always a pleasure, guys. You guys have my favorite football podcast. So
let's go right there. We'll just keep DJ out of it. So as long as it's me and Bucky, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
It's fine. DJ gets all his love from wherever he needs to get it from.
That's right. He's
I see him popping up on my feed every
now and then for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Move the Sticks. Appreciate you guys for joining us. Obviously, appreciate Bruce. We'll catch you next time right here on Move the Sticks.